Diam Jesu ya Mr. Bodi, dudu ane frame Ghana ba.
Yanka siasa asini na eya bodende maye. Moja ina nanu hwe go de ji o man Ghana esi ho no. Dubule wose ye bitu aso. De ekirima abo edimpa.
Memo bibia akwaba eba kanokra dwumadi so a ewo Bodi TV. Na me a medi mu chia me ye frame William Bodi. Me ka kanokra na waje se emabunu fa dwene. Hwe entokwa bi asi ewo Sudan. Na ebibifuo medwene ho a mente ase. Sojafo akukoda mienu atu aban agu. Omutugu wie ya weisi me na mediso ene akwakwaye ntokwa na enipa evu no penny behwe areho video no ha yemomode a yiwasum de hwe maso yi ne tie di ntia ntokwa no ekos na hwe de esi.
Fighting between the army and paramilitaries in Sudan has killed around 200 people and wounded more than 2,000, damaging hospitals and hampering aid after 3 days of urban warfare. So what is behind the fighting? The clashes erupted amid an apparent power struggle between the two main factions of the Sudanese military regime. The Sudanese armed forces are broadly loyal to General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the country's ruler or the current ruler of Sudan, while the paramilitaries of the Rapid Support Forces, also known as RCF, which is a collection of militias, follow the former warlord General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, also known as Hemeti. So, before we look at the powers, both regional and geopolitical, that are behind this conflict, let's look at the two generals. So, who is Abdel Fattah al-Burhan? The army general, who is the de facto leader of Sudan, became a household name in 2019 after the army removed longtime dictator Omar al-Bashir following months of mass protests. General Burhan was a close ally of al-Bashir, and that's how he rose through the rank as a military commander. Of course, the other reason was because he was leading his criminal campaigns in Darfur. Most of you remember the history of the Darfur region of Sudan. But in 2019, Burhan emerged on the side of change. In other words, he sided with the protesters. That's how he ended up chairing the Transitional Military Council, which was a body set up to oversee Sudan's transition to democratic rule. However, with the deadline of handing over power to civilian rulers looming in October 2021, Burhan staged a coup, overthrowing civilian Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok. Since then, Burhan has been the de facto leader of Sudan, or the president of Sudan if you wish. Now, who is Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, also known as Hemeti? Dagalo, who is most commonly known as Hemeti, has enjoyed a strong position of power since al-Bashir rule and beyond. He came from a family of camel herders far away from the capital, Khartoum, and Hemeti climbed the ranks to become the leader of the notorious Janjaweed militia. This is the militia that al-Bashir used to send to the Darfur region to suppress people who are opposed to the government coming to drill oil and moving them away from their ancestral land. So he was sent to crack down on this western Darfur region in the early 2000s. And a lot of you may have come across that movie Darfur, which shows what the Janjaweed were doing. They were committing atrocities. Some of them, I don't want to even talk about them here. But the militia, which is accused of committing war crimes against Darfur's non-Arab rebels, is the one that eventually became the RCF, also known as Rapid Support Forces. And the warlord of that time became its leader. And back in 2017, Sudan passed a law recognizing the RCF as an independent security force. So that's how we ended up with two militaries in Sudan competing for control. So how did the military rivalries develop? Now, as I said earlier, the RCF was founded by dictator al-Bashir to crush a rebellion in the Darfur region of Sudan. and that region is where you find non-Arabs, and oil was discovered in that region. And you know what the government in Sudan did, and this led to a rebellion by the local people, and the dictator found this militia of Arabs called the Janjaweed and unleashed it on the population of Darfur. So the Janjaweed was later to become associated with widespread atrocities. So that's how it was formed for that purpose. In 2013, that is about 13 years later, al-Bashir transformed this Janjaweed into a semi-organized paramilitary force. And the leader of this militia, the warlords, including Hemeti, were given military ranks. And that's where we start seeing the start of the rivalry between the regular army and this mercenary paramilitary. After the dictator, al-Bashir transformed this militia into a paramilitary, in other words, his own private army. He began exporting its services to his friends in Libya. So 10,000 RSF mercenaries were fighting in Libya for General Haftar. About 20,000 of the same group were in Yemen. They were fighting Houthi rebels on behalf of Saudi Arabia. So they became a mercenary private army of the dictator until the year 2019, when the dictator was removed from power. But as they were doing that, they also became so powerful and began controlling some sectors of the economy, and in particular mining. Hemeti, the current general and the leader of the RSF, is known to be rich because the RSF controls and mines gold in Sudan. They also do this alongside the Russian Wagner mercenary group, which helps this RSF to export the same gold. While the regular army, the army of Al-Burhan, is also involved in manufacturing and agriculture in Sudan. So the other rivalry between the two militaries is economic rivalry. But this RSF grew so powerful and has a force of about 100,000 men. So you're beginning to see a bigger picture, and the rivalry goes deep because as the military transition rule was signing an agreement with the civilian representative last year in December, the transition deal is that before they hold democratic election in Sudan, the RCF paramilitary has to be integrated into the Sudanese military. In other words, these 100,000 strong men have to be absorbed by the regular army. But the leader of the RCF, Hemeti, doesn't want that. And that's why at the beginning of this month, they were supposed to do that. They were supposed to start integrating into the regular army, and now this happened. And so what are the major geopolitical powers that are also involved in this conflict? And as I said, the two generals are the main actors, but then we have major geopolitical dimensions that are also at play, with Russia, the United States, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and other powers battling for influence in Sudan. The Saudis and the UAE, they have seen the Sudan's transition as an opportunity to push back against Islamist influence in the region. Remember, the dictator al-Bashir was part of the Sunni Islamists influence, which was also in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood. And when he was removed, for the two countries, the Saudis and the UAE, they found it as a new dawn for them to remove the Islamists' control in that country. But then we have the Russians, who are also working with the RCF, that is the General Hemeti group, in mining gold and financial activities in Sudan. So the Wagner mercenary group is in Sudan and works alongside RCF to mine gold. So they are involved in that way. And again, through Egypt, the Russians were trying to reach out to General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan to have him allow them to construct a naval base on the Red Sea. So Russia is in the process of constructing a naval base on the port of Sudan on the Red Sea. And the United States doesn't want that. And that's why the US was also pushing General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan to hasten the transition period and hand over power back to the civilian rulers, because these civilian rulers, led by the deposed Prime Minister Hamdok, are very close allies of the United States. So the US wants the civilian rulers in Sudan because they are very close allies of the US. And these are all the powers that are at play here. And that's why I said there is more geopolitical dimension to this.
Sudan, 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 Sudan.